to do this, and I give many examples in my books, then I have heard the argument from my own mouth. I've listened to my own words, and I'm the expert in how I go forward from there. And when the coach acknowledges that I'm the expert in how I have succeeded and how I have failed in my life, then we're talking self-efficacy, because I drive the process from here on, and it is client-directed, and I will succeed. Not only that, I will love what I'm doing, and I will love the coach who is facilitating me enjoying myself. Walt Disney made that decision years ago. How do we get people to enjoy being themselves, even though they're adults? We get them into Disneyland, into Disney World, into Epcot Center, where they can encounter themselves in the best possible light. And that's motivation.
Listening rather than telling.
It's listening rather than telling, and it's listening specifically for emotional drivers. Why is this important to you? I want to lose weight. Why is that important to you? Because I will be thinner. Why is thinner going to help you change your life? What's it going to do for you? Well, because if I'm thinner, I'll have more energy. What do you need this energy for? Well, I go home every day and I'm tired. So your family matters? Yes. I can't do anything after 8 hours, 10 hours of work a day. I'm blotter. I need more energy. Well, the guy doesn't want to lose weight. The guy wants to engage better with his life. And his family is important to him. And he wants to be a more vibrant husband and father and brother and support system for his entire family. You start to see metaphors like, I can't be the anchor of my family when I'm going home exhausted, and my default strategy is to drink a glass of red wine and eat a fatty meal and fall asleep in front of the TV. That's not about losing weight. That's about a deeper emotional driver, which is going to keep him coming back to the gym. But if you're just measuring his weight and dropping the kilograms and saying that you're achieving what he wants to, that's not true, because you failed to engage with the reasons that he would come to the gym for the many months it takes. And remember, to change basic behaviors can take 200-300 days. What are you going to achieve in 36 sessions? You need that staying power. You need the person to be able to say, this is why I'm here, the cherished ideal that drives them to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning.
That's a word that's cropped up with you a few times too, the word cherish, something that they hold dear to them.
Deeply held. But you've got to get to it in your first interview, because you want them back. You've got to discover in that first interview, same as selling a house. Why are they in love with the house? Why should they fall in love with the house? You've got a very short window of opportunity. And that means you have to be open to it and listening for it, because people will give you the right answers, but they will be cloaked in a whole range of rubbish. I want to get fitter, I want to get stronger, I want to move better. Each of those has an emotional driver that is very variable. Unless you understand why this, and answer these 3 questions in your first interview if you can. Why has this person decided to do this kind of thing at this stage of their life? That's the biopsychosocial approach to medicine, psychiatry, psychology. Why has this person come to this point in their life? Why have they decided on this behavior? And why them particularly? What are the deep personal drivers? What cherished belief system is underneath this? And again, I've had women wanting to lose weight to get into a wedding dress. Why? Because they played with Barbie dolls when they were young. And in their minds, Ken was always leaving Barbie if she was fat. But Barbie was thin and beautiful and tall, and if she could be that, and believe me, this woman was 4'10" and overweight. The amount of weight she would have lost to get into that wedding dress would have actually killed her. Her hair would have fallen out, she would have died. At her height, she would have needed to be 35 kilos, and she'd never managed that. But nevertheless, a bit of high heels, a bit of understanding of motivation, the Barbie and Ken story, she went waltzing down that aisle because we engaged her fiancé to say to her, if you looked like Barbie, I would have left you long ago. You know, he loved her the way she was, and he enjoyed her. He felt she was a real woman. And all of that was needed to be brought in, otherwise she couldn't have lost the weight she did. Not 22 kilos, but 10. And she lost it rapidly, and she'd never lost more than 2 to 3 kilos in her life. So we need to know what makes someone else tick, and we don't know if we don't ask. And if you want to know something about someone, for heaven's sake, just ask. But you need to listen to those answers, and you need to take the focus off yourself as an expert and devolve it to the client.
Putting your clients in the driving seat with change, there's hard physical and neurological changes in the brain that come with this as well?
Absolutely.
In the past, brain tissue has always been thought of as stagnant, but it's in more recent times, it actually looks like it's very plastic and very malleable, and not as we first thought.
Well, absolutely, because stress is battering our brains all the time, and our brains are losing neurons at an incredible rate because of stress. And what the brain does is produces a whole range of hormones and substances which build up the brain again and repair it. If we exceed the limits of what the body and brain can do, then what happens is the brain not only goes into decline because it can't keep up with the repair job, but it actually stops repairing it completely. And one of the great answers to that is that most of these growth factors are produced by the body under load of exercise and movement, and particularly novel and complex movement, because the brain has to attend to those and has to build neurons to accommodate that new movement, such as you'd get by adding a power plate or a Viper or a TRX or a kettlebell. Anything new and complex, mixing it up in foot positions regularly, changing the load of the power plate machine. I'll give you 2 examples of that soon, but all of that makes the brain, number 1, build tissue, and number 2, provides it with the hormonal stuff. The brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the endothelial growth factors, the vasovagal growth factors, the insulin-like growth factors. All of these are produced by muscles under load, and they're utilized by the brain to build new tissue. And then the brain thrives on complexity and novelty, and obviously has lesser barriers when it's all fun. Putting that all together, you have a fun, stimulating, changing environment, driven by emotions, and you've got a very happy customer who changes dramatically. Let me give an example of what this might mean. I recently posted about a client who is 27 years old and who suffers from depersonalization disorder as a result of terrible stresses as a child. And what this means is that she's constantly in a ketamine-like state, a state of dissociative anesthesia, where she feels like she's living in 2 dimensions and body and brain don't connect. What is happening to her happens at a distance, and it is a dreadfully empty feeling. When I put on the power plate last week, and with her eyes closed, eyes open, power plate on, power plate off, half on, half off, I ran her through a series of events where suddenly her depersonalization dropped out from 7 to nothing. And she bounced off that machine, alive and engaged, because what we'd forced her brain to do at 8 times the force of gravity was hear the noise coming through the background. The background of stressful hormones was driven apart like a curtain by this flood of information from the body. And to a lesser extent, that happens with everybody during complex exercise. It is about the movement. It is about the changing movement under changing loads that constantly alerts the brain to something different happening from one step to the next. We're not sitting there doing mindless curls or mindless bench presses. We're moving, twisting, turning, lifting, pulling, shifting. You know, a Bulgarian lunge is very different to anything you've done before. Working on a TRX and rowing, moving your feet around is very different to stuff that you do. And so your brain has to build pathways to accommodate it. It creates the software to run the hardware. So there is this bilateral reciprocal change between brain and body around 3-dimensional movement, around challenging movement, and around change and novelty and complexity in the environment, which builds brain tissue and is a great repair mechanism for depression, anxiety, pain, stress, and everything else you can think about. A better body and a better brain need to communicate, and the big illusion, not only in your relationship with the client, but between the brain and body, the illusion about communication is the illusion that it happened at all. You don't know if this communication happened unless you ask and you test. And we don't do that enough. We gather data. I mean, we gather data on people all the time in the gym, but do we ever show them the graphs of where they've come from? Do we ever take them back to the day 1 sequence 6 months later and say, now try what you did on the first day and see how different it is. See how light those weights are now. We don't ever show people really how, we might weigh them or anything, show them how far they've come.
So incorporating too much routine into exercise stagnate the brain versus
we only learn under conditions of differentiation. This is what Gregory Bateson pointed out as well about dolphins. Let me give you an example. If you experience trauma as a child and I keep you calm and try and talk to you about it, you never actually get better. If I recreate that experience in the room but I keep you safe, you then unlearn under the same conditions that you learned. So in other words, you have to challenge people to create learning, to create new tissue. Routine is something they habituate to and they get bored. If you try and train yourself at a gym and every day you go and do the same pull-ups and push-downs and pec decks and bench presses and all the rubbish we do in bodybuilding, you've got to be highly motivated to do that or wow, it gets boring. So one day you'll train legs, the next day you'll train arms, all rubbish. You know, I've been going to Primal Fitness for 4 years now. I've yet to do the same routine more or less twice. I'm on like the 40-second iteration because the guys there are constantly giving me new stuff. Because suddenly I'm doing a plank, but I'm doing it this way or that way, or pushing this or reaching up there. Or plank's not a plank anymore. I don't do push-ups anymore. It's somewhere there, it's something here. Lift the hand, do that, carry the weight, do some thoracic rotations. Pick up the Viper, but it's look how many things there are for the Viper. That's why I love it. 6,000 exercises. Brilliant piece of equipment. You can't throw a barbell around like that.
No, that's for sure.
Try and hold on to the damn barbell while you're swinging it through thread the needle. Number one, you don't want to hit anything, and number two, oh my God, you can't hold on to the damn thing. So, creating those little things where your brain can engage with novelty, and I'm treating hemiplegics with vipers and with pound plates. And I'm getting their brain to accept signals that it didn't even recognize months before, because now the right hand and left hand are linked in a ritual movement, which is telling the brain where both are, and now the brain can coordinate those. There is brilliance out there. We just have to use it in terms of increasing novelty, increasing complexity, and injecting fun. And then normalizing the relationship every 15 minutes with some catch and pass or something which says, listen, we're equals. I'm only the expert with your permission when you ask. It's a different mindset.
Oh, 100%.
So think of emotions now. Think of emotions in their relation to movement. We didn't evolve to have speech. We had the capacity, and we had to evolve it along the way. And the way we did it was through a general consensus about what sound portrayed a cat, what sound portrayed a tree. We did a whole range of stuff. And finally we agreed, and we put sentences together very unique to most languages. But here's the thing. We spoke out loud. We used our lips, tongue, and larynx. We used the premotor areas of our brain. We used Broca's area, which is in the motor cortex of the frontal areas, to produce this speech. It was public speech. And at the same time, we could hear what we were thinking because it was out loud, but we could hear what everybody else thought. And I've written about this in a publication about evolutions and executive functions, because as our frontal lobes developed in response to speech, they also developed the ability to shut down the lips, tongue, and larynx. And whilst we were still speaking, only we could hear it, and those were our thoughts. Our thoughts are public speech made private. Even though we're thinking, and nobody can hear what we're thinking, if you put little micro electrodes on lips, tongue, and larynx, you can see the same micro movements which we would use if we were actually speaking out those words. Our thoughts are motor activity suppressed into the motor areas of the brain. It's amazing then that even though our non-conscious is non-linguistic, rapidly our thoughts are motor activity, and we begin to think and feel better when we've moved. Ask anybody with anxiety. The only thing they want to do is move, is get up and get out of it. And that's the whole issue. Our thoughts are motor activity.